There is a moment in episode 6 where Lady Shin hides a sick servant instead of helping her, and when Maomao and the others catch her, the conversation that follows is the most quietly devastating thing in the entire season, because it wasn't a crime. Hiding a low ranking servant, letting her suffer, deciding her life was an inconvenience rather than a concern, none of it was actionable under the rules of this world. The servant didn't have the rank to matter. The wrong couldn't be corrected because the system didn't recognize it as a wrong in the first place. That's not a plot point, that's the thesis. Most period dramas use hierarchy as set dressing. The elaborate costumes, the formal titles, the complicated rules about who bows to whom, its atmosphere. It tells you when and where the story is set. It creates obstacles for the characters to navigate. And then the story proceeds to care about the characters regardless of their rank, because that's what stories do. The Apothecary Diaries is doing something different. It's using rank as lens, and what it's examining through that lens is a very specific question. Whose life counts? Not in a philosophical sense, practically, mechanically. When something goes wrong, when someone gets hurt, or poisoned, or used, or discarded, what determines whether that registers as a problem worth solving? The answer, every time, is rank. Not the severity of the harm, not the moral weight of what happened, rank. And the show doesn't editorialize this. It doesn't pause to tell you this is wrong. It just keeps showing you the mechanism, case after case, until you feel it as clearly as the characters do. Mao understands this world better than almost anyone in it. She can read the situation faster than the people who created it. She can trace a cause back to its source, identify who benefits, name the logic underneath the cruelty. Episode after episode, she is the clearest observer in the room, and it changes almost nothing structural. That's the part that's easy to miss if you're watching for plot momentum, because Mao Mao keeps solving problems, and solving problems feels like progress. But the problems she solves are specific and individual. The condition that generates them, the hierarchy, the closed system, the calculation of whose life is worth protecting, that persists completely untouched. She doesn't try to change it, not because she has given up, because she understands, probably better than anyone, that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. You don't fix a machine by explaining its logic to it. What you do instead is what she does. You understand it precisely enough to survive inside it. You find the narrow spaces where your specific capabilities make you useful. You protect the people you can reach without drawing so much attention that the system decides to remove you. That's not defeat, that's strategy. But it's a very particular kind of strategy, one that requires accepting, at least functionally, the world as it is. Go back through the season and look at what actually gets people removed. Lady Shin isn't exiled for hiding a sick servant. That was fine. She's exiled because she became a liability, because the political geometry around her shifted to a point where keeping her was more costly than removing her. The exile is a calculation, not a verdict. The poisoning cases get solved not because the court has a genuine interest in justice, but because unexplained deaths are destabilizing. They create uncertainty. Uncertainty in a system built on controlled hierarchy is the actual threat. The death itself matters less than what it implies about who has power to act without consequences. And the late emperor, the artist who hid his paintings behind palace walls, who was exactly wrong for the role he was born into, he isn't remembered with sympathy or tragedy. He's remembered as an administrative problem that resolved itself. In every case, the question is the same. Not, was this wrong? But, is this a disruption we need to manage? That's how power actually moves in this world. And it's recognizable because it's how power often moves in ours. Here is the split the show keeps drawing. The people who understand the system, who can read it clearly, who know what it requires, and can give it what it needs without losing themselves, They survive. They might not thrive, they might operate under significant constraint, but they stay in the game. The people who don't understand it or who refuse to perform what it demands pay the price. Xiaolan, learning to read and write, is not just a warm moment about education, it's about survival strategy. If she gets out of the palace, literacy is leverage. It's the difference between having options and having none. The system gave her that opportunity not out of generosity. Jinchi's motive was political, but she understood immediately what it could mean and she took it. Shisui paid the highest price of anyone in the season. Lost her family, her identity, her place, and what she got in return was survival without closure. Freedom that arrived with grief attached, because the situation she was in required her to give up everything that made her who she was just to get out of it. The system didn't break for her, she had to break around it. And Shaolan never gets answers about what happened. That thread just stays open, because that's how it works for the people on the lower rungs. The story doesn't reach back to resolve things for them, it moves on. The show is set in an ancient imperial court. The costumes are elaborate. The specific political structures are historical. None of this is our world literally, but the logic is. Power punishing inconvenience rather than wrongdoing. That's not ancient. The idea that rank determines whose harm registers as worth correcting, that's not ancient. The way a system can absorb a crisis, remove the specific disruption, and continue entirely unchanged, that's not ancient. What the Apothecary Diaries does, by putting these dynamics inside a beautifully realized historical setting, is give you just enough distance to see the mechanism clearly. The period framing is not escapism, it's a lens. It lets you watch something familiar from a position where you're not inside it, which means you can actually see its shape. And the shape is hierarchy decides worth. Seeing the truth doesn't guarantee change. The system corrects for disruption, not injustice. And survival inside it requires either the right rank or the right kind of invisible usefulness. That's what this show is about. I want to come back to Maomao one more time because she's the argument the show is making about how to live inside this logic. She's not trying to be a hero. She's not positioning herself to change anything. She has one tool, knowledge, specifically medical knowledge, and she uses it precisely and without sentiment. She helps because she can, and because helping in small specific ways is the only honest response she has found to a world that doesn't offer bigger ones. But here is the thing, her detachment, her refusal to need the system to be fair in order to function inside it, that's not resignation, it's a kind of integrity. She sees it clearly and she doesn't pretend otherwise. She doesn't console herself with stories about how the code is secretly just, or how rank secretly doesn't matter, or how the right people are in charge. She looks at the mechanism, understands it, and decides, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to solve the problem in front of me. That's what I can do. And that decision to remain present and capable inside the world you see clearly without illusion, that's its own form of strength. Not a revolution, not a solution, but something real. So that's what the Apothecary Diaries is actually about. Not just a mystery series set in a pretty historical world, not just a slow burn romance with a capable protagonist. It's a sustained examination of how power works when the structure itself is the problem, and what survival, dignity, and genuine care look like when you can't fix the structure. Maomao doesn't save the world, she saves the person in front of her again and again with everything she has. In a place like this, that's not a small thing. So that's all the videos on Apothecary Diaries. If you have watched from the beginning, I genuinely thank you so much. This series gave me a lot to think about, and I hope at least some of it gave you something too. If you're new and want to start from the beginning, I'll put the full series together so you can watch straight through. And as always, tell me what you think. Did the show give you what you came for, or did it leave you wanting something it was never going to offer? Drop it in the comments, and I'll see you in season 3.